Hi. First video, I read the first half of The Wump World, written and illustrated by Peet. Think about what happened in the first half, and I'll summarize briefly. So we have this cute little world where these creatures called Wumps live a happy life, eating and playing under the trees and the rivers and streams. And then some alien Pollutians come and start to take over and build cities, and the poor Wumps are stuck living in the caverns below. So here's where we left off. They're eating moss and fungus down in the caves. Let's find out what happens next. So there was more and more noise and more everything. More buildings with more smokestacks puffing, more smoke. The Pollutians are still building their cities bigger and taller. And everything's getting polluted and dirty. More freeways with more traffic shooting out more and more clouds of exhaust. More trash and more trash piles with more and more gush wasting into the rivers and lakes. Can you see dumping all their waste into the rivers? Oh, that's no good, is it? Pretty soon, the cities are so clouded by the factory smoke and the fumes from the freeways that the Pollutians themselves could barely breathe. They went sneezing and wheezing about in the streets, grouching and grumbling and blaming one another for the awful mess that they were in. It's your fault. No, it's your fault. What a mess you made. One day, an angry crowd gathered outside the World Tower building, demanding to see the World Chief. See, there he is, blowing his nose up. When the chief appeared on his balcony, all the Pollutians began shouting at once, "We can't breathe the air, we can't drink the water, and we can't stand the noise. We've had enough." And the chief went, Choo! I know just how you feel, and something will be done at once. I promise. What do you think he's got to do to solve this problem? Any predictions? So with no time to lose, the chief called for a meeting with his 3 top outer spacemen. "Gentlemen, this world of ours has gone sour. We've got to get out of here quick. But first, we must find a new world. That's your job, men. So get going." "Righto, Chief," barked the men, and within 15 minutes, they were at the spaceport aboard their spaceships. Then zroosh, zroosh, zroosh. The men took off in 3 different directions, and in seconds, they were zooming about in outer space, 7,000 miles an hour, looking for a pretty new planet to live on. Days passed with no word from the outer spacemen. After waiting a week, the world chief flew into a rage. "Blast it all," he bellowed. "What's keeping those blithering bubbleheads?" Then one Monday morning, out of the dark, smudgy sky swooshed one of the spaceships. It had returned. As the ship touched down, the man hopped out shouting, "I've done it! I've done it! I found a new world! It's a bigger and better world!" "Nice going, lad," cried the world chief. And the crowd gathered at the spaceport and gave their hero one great rousing cheer, which ended in a fit of sneezing. Achoo! In no time, the great news was sent flashing around the world over radio and TV, warning that all Pollutians to be packed up and ready to go within 24 hours. Wow, that's pretty quick. All packing up, getting ready to leave the Wump world. At dawn the next day, the entire population swarmed into the space center and crowded aboard the giant spaceships. After double-checking to make sure all Pollutians were accounted for, the world chief gave the signal for blastoff. With a thunderous roar, the giant ships shot off the ground. Kazoom! Up and away through the black smoked sky, they were gone. And at long last, peace and quiet settled over Wump World again. Then the sudden silence came as a shock to the Wumps. They could hardly believe their ears. Still, they wanted to take no chances, and they remained in their caverns with their ears cocked for the slightest sound. They're still worried. After a long silence, they decided it was time to go, and led by the biggest Wump, they crept up the tunnel to the cave entrance to find it covered by a crust of cement. So everything got paved over, even their hole that went down to their cave. But with one powerful push of his snout, the biggest Wump bumped his way through. And then one by one, the Wumps waddled out onto a freeway, and they gaped in wide-eyed amazement. They had feared something awful was happening to their world, but this was much worse than they could have imagined. Remember, they couldn't see anything that was happening because they were hiding down below. They were staggered by the size of the huge buildings with walls and walls of windows looming up on every side, and the broad layers of hard, flat crust covering the earth, which felt strangely cold to their feet. There's no sign of any tree or tuft of grass or anything green at all. Even the sky was gone. It's blackened out, and the Wumps wondered if there was anything there left for them at all. And at least they must find out. So they wandered the freeways for miles and miles, only to find more and more buildings with endless heaps of wreckage and rubble. For all they could see, their world was completely ruined. They were footsore and weary, and the Wumps were about to give up and head back for their cave when the biggest Wump let out a joyful call, and he goes, "Wump!" What's he see? What's he see in all this mess? He goes, "Wump!" Just ahead of them, there's a grassy meadow with a clump of bumbershoot trees, all that was left of their lovely world. And they all went wump wumping for joy and ran over to it. They went bounding off the freeway and out into the meadow. And pretty soon the hungry Wumps were munching away on the tall, tender grass like they used to. Now there was new hope for the Wumps. And in time, those murky skies would clear up and the rains would wash the scum from the rivers and the lakes. And even new plants would start to grow. The tall buildings would come tumbling down and the freeways would crumble away. And in time, the green growth would wind its way up through the rubble. But the Wump world would never quite be the same. The end. I hope you enjoyed The Wump World by Bill Peet as much as I enjoy it ever since I was a kid, younger than you. All right, that's it. Bye now.